Hey everyone, it's Christopher Swan and welcome to this week's episode of Living Your Journey. I have the amazing opportunity to chat with people that love what they do in life. They understand their passions. Maybe it's a career path or a dedication to volunteering and giving back. It's kind of like following their North Star. Even though their story may change as they go, they understand that they're on their journey every day. After the episode, you can find out more about each guest and their stories at accidentalinformation.com. This week, I chat with Adrian Cropley, the president and founder of Cropley Communication. Adrian is my first guest in a semi-corporate-ish role, specifically in internal communication, change management, and professional development. If you have no clue what any of that is, don't worry, we explain it. More importantly, we focus on working in that kind of corporate world, connecting value and meaning to your job, why Adrian fell in love with his profession, and some solid career advice. Adrian also discusses the importance of getting out of your comfort zone to keep learning in life. Adrian shares some really good examples and also a few crazy stories, like when he ignored travel warnings to Algeria and ended up being shot at while there. Total rebel. No matter your career, Adrian's advice is solid, and he has a great view into managing a career. So take a listen and get a peek into an entirely different world with a wonderful guest. Welcome to the show, Adrian. It is such a pleasure to have you here today.
It's great to be on with you, Christopher.
Well, and thank you for that. I also realized that you are my first guest that hovers in the corporate world, yet is doing their own thing, running their own organization. So that actually, I kind of love it because all of my other guests have been more creative and really running a small business or doing something different. And I think you're going to have such a different perspective than the previous guest. So that's also why I really love that you're here.
Oh, terrific. Well, I'll try and live up to those expectations, Christopher, if that's okay.
Please do. I also love that you're also my first Australian guest. So you're all the way in Melbourne, and that is totally unique compared to everybody else too.
Well, and if you need me to slow down and speak more articulate rather than the Australian twang, that's fine.
I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. If anything, they'll complain at how fast I talk. So I think you'll be just fine.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So you'll sound slow otherwise. It'll be good compared to me.
Okay, we'll do some comparisons by the end of it. Who talked the fastest?
Well, let me introduce you. You are the CEO of Cropley Communication. You're an Australian-based communication, change management, and professional development organization. You're, even though you're based in Australia, you're a global business, and you also personally come with a long background in internal communications, human resources, and for me, you're like a superhero of networking. Did I miss anything?
You did well. You probably, if you'd added any more in there, it was probably going to date me a lot because it seems like there's a whole list of things that I've done in my career.
Well, there is, but, it has such a natural blend for you, I think, that, things just kind of connect and evolve. And even that last piece I said there, that professional development, I think that's a little bit newer, based on conversations that we've had.
It is, and it's really where life has taken me. It's one of those. I think I've always been one of those people that you read the signs in life and where it is steering you. And this latest adventure into professional development, particularly trying to run this globally, has been a real evolution of my life and where it's come from and where it is now.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I'd love to, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about your background, but let's actually talk about you today. Let's talk about your current world. So maybe you could give us two things. Give us a snapshot of what your organization is really about. I probably didn't do it justice, but give us that snapshot. And then tell us why you love what you're doing.
Oh, excellent. Well, I think the second question is really easy. Actually, both questions are easy. Thank you, Christopher. You're going easy on me at the very beginning of this. I'm sure it'll get hard as we go.
Right. I'm going to ask you about your deep down soul and what you like.
Yeah. That's right. Just don't ask me to sing. Not right at the moment.
No.
but my organization now, because we've really moved into professional development, or what I call training for the communication profession. So it's a profession I've been part of for many, many years, and this is my way of giving back to the profession by saying, how do we support communication professionals in their careers, wherever they are in the world? So as the consulting model, and I still do a lot of the consulting in change management and communication strategy, as you mentioned before, but this is very much building the Center for Strategic Communication Excellence, which is the title of the new business, still under the Cropley brand, but it's very much focusing on professional development just for communication professionals. So it's there's this whole thing about supporting the profession in demonstrating value in the organizations that they work for. So we wanted a lot more of that formal training and development in skills that really support people in the profession.
Can we take a small step back then? And I love all that. And I love that you have this new kind of new world, new evolution for you that keeps it, sounds like it keeps it fresh. But even just for folks that don't know about communications, or kind of what your organization would even offer to customers, like who are your customers and what exactly are you offering them as a service?
So basically my customer base are anybody that works in the communications discipline. So that is, your external comms, your PR, your communications marketing, to your internal, which is your internal communications professionals, and people working in the fringes of communication, like digital communication and change communication. So it's anybody that has that, basically that's title of a communication professional, and that's across a broad suite of disciplines. And it's really now is, so my customers are back in the profession itself when it comes to the Center for Strategic Communication Excellence. My customers, when it comes to the consulting side of the business, is really about making a difference in organizations and getting tangible business results through communication. And I consult to organizations in obviously helping them be better at change within their organizations, and kind of managing out those dips in productivity that happens during change, and also to help them build strategy to reach their audiences in delivering their message or having an outcome for the communications that we deliver.
So would your customers then, not just those communication people that you're working with, but like the organizations, are these like big Fortune 500s and that sort of stuff? The people that actually need real help because there's massive change in organizations. And, because I think about recently in the news in the US, Intel just made the news. They just laid off, I think it was 12,000 people.
Yeah.
And so that is a huge change. So, in that world, I would think, just gosh, what's it like to work at that organization now that they just laid off tons of these people? So is it like that sort of organization that you could help go? Let's say it was Intel. You would go to them and help them through this kind of change and how to communicate to the rest of the employees that are left?
Yeah, absolutely, Christopher. So the joy with my business is I can work from anywhere from local government, right the way through to major international corporates, and have done that. So organizations like Unilever globally, I have worked with, and some of the big banks, some of the big four consulting organizations and accounting organizations, but right down to small entities. In fact, I sit on the board of two small entities here in Australia who are basically startup organizations. Because it doesn't matter what size the organization, you've always got the challenges of, number one, communicating effectively with your people, and number two, communicating with your external audience, and overlay that with times of dramatic change quite often. They need that help and support. The interesting thing about my my work is certainly in change has been working with major organizations through things like downsizing or right sizing or any other type of sizing that people want to put the words to.
Can I pause you there for a minute? I just want to mention right sizing. So that is my favorite one. Especially for the folks that are listening that are not living in this corporate world, and that's kind of also why I was trying to give some an analogy to this. Because we have so many people that listen that are also in the creative space, and so they're going to listen to comms and think, I don't know what you people are talking about. But right sizing is a perfect term for people that don't know. It's instead of, I'm going to describe it, and you tell me if I'm wrong. But it's also like, we just really need to shift the business to be the right size for our business now. We're either inflated or we're doing something different. We're not going to just lay off people. We're going to right size it. So it is truly accurate, but in the cynical side of Christopher here, I'm totally like, that's like corporate BS. I love it. So I had to pause you because I didn't know if everybody would know that. But it's also a great example of also why you are in the business and what you're doing, because you have to be like an expert in this other language and the things that happen in big corporations.
You do, but it's the interesting thing, Christopher, and you really caught on with the BS statement, because what we do is when we're uncomfortable in change is we create the words that seem a little better.
Right.
Because it's a little more pleasant to right size than it is to downsize, because that's rather negative because it means that people are going to lose their job. The reality is, in right sizing, potentially people are going to lose their job. So it's just that let's give it another spin, shall we?
Exactly. I'm sorry, that one it makes me laugh because it just makes me feel like I'm watching an episode of The Office, and it's so funny to me. And it's not to degrade at all the work that all these comms professionals and HR professionals are doing. Obviously, I've been in that world. I know what it's like, and it makes a lot of sense. It's just the funny language of it.
And look, that language has evolved over time. I think the joy in the profession now, and the thing I resisted against very early in my career is I never wanted to work in external communications because it was PR, it was spin, it was how could I bedazzle the audience to make something that seems really bad look really good, and that's why I was drawn to internal comms originally in my career, because it was all about how do I help people and how do I help them through change that's happening in the organization and actually give them the honest message. But the good thing these days is everybody is now expecting you to give them straight talk, and that's what communications in this day and age is all about.
I love that. It's so true, especially I think with our younger staff, like millennials, and I don't think the next one. What are they? The Z's? I don't know what we call them. I forget.
Yeah, it's a next gen millennial, next gen, isn't it, or something like that?
Yeah, I read it somewhere on a YouTube comment the other day, and I think they're just starting to inch their way in, but they expect straight talk and just be like it is. And I appreciate that as well. Hey, I just want to shift gears a little bit because I think we can go on forever about this, but. The question I want to get back to also is, so why do you love this? What is it that's making communications or change or professional, growth, that development? What is it that makes you love those things?
Well, thanks for that question, because I love it when somebody asks me what it is I love about the work that I do, and I think every day I fall in love even more with the work I do. And again, it's to do with this evolution. Because when I started in internal communications, I started because I really wanted to help organizations talk honestly to their employees. And I was a bit of a stickler for let's stop spinning it and let's talk frankly with our employees. And now that we're seeing this evolution where the demands of, as you said, the generations and what consumers and customers and, any stakeholder expects is to hear the truth, hear some honesty from organizations. I feel like I'm I'm there and I'm still helping to forge that path in our profession. So, it's the thing that really ties me in, and being able to help organizations. So when somebody comes to me and says, look, Adrian, we are going through an awful change and we're seeing these sorts of things happen, please come in and help us sort through some of these issues that are impacting our people or our customers, and just to give them that different perspective because they're so close into it is the thing that really drives me every day. And I guess that's why I've moved even more into helping to develop people being better at doing this stuff.
Is it, because I heard a couple things there, or, I always like to paraphrase things in my head, because what I heard was, you are the truth bringer. That's part of what you're doing. You're just saying it like it is and helping people really understand the real truth of what's happening. But then I started to hear, like, you're also like the fixer. You're the coming in and there's a problem and you get to fix it. So I'm curious, because there's that piece, but then this, helping people be better. Is it also that you're like, you get to go in there and just make a real difference, and you can see your work tangibly come to life with organizations, but you're also helping people have like a better, or maybe rather they're liking or loving their jobs more because you're making it better for them?
There's a lot of that, Christopher. It's the thing that does really drive me is that people are having a better experience in their life. I often look at it that, as we've all done, we've done that analysis of saying, well, a third of my time is my home and my family, a third of the time is sleep, hopefully, and it's a third of the time that is work. And so if a third of your life is spent in something you really are not enjoying and not liking, and you can have an influence on changing that environment a little bit, then you just feel like you're making people's lives better.
So true.
And it may sound very utopian, or but to me that's very tangible. And when I walk away from organizations where they're going, oh, look, this has been fabulous, that, we've been able to get to the bottom of some of the issues, and we didn't realize actually they were big communication issues. We didn't realize that sometimes listening was a good strategy.
So
simple. But when you read it, you know what it's like.
Well, I think you just hit on some really cool point there, that it's this connection. So it's so easy for all of us to look in the world and see, like, people are volunteering, which is so amazing that people are doing that. And I love that. And it's so easy to see, like, they're really making a difference in somebody's life, right? If they're homeless and they're helping out with this homeless shelter. But that's like the obvious connection. And so when you're talking about, like, you're going in there and you're doing these things, you're making a difference in people's lives, where, said it could be utopian sounding. But really, it's not. It's just not as obvious as doing things that, that we see black and white. This is more about, I'm making this real difference behind the scenes to make life better. Because you're right. We spend a lot of time at the office or at work, and I don't want to hate it. I want to like what I'm doing, or at least like the environment. And so I think there's a connection there for sure. It's just maybe for anybody that's actually in a job, it's, I think, so important to find the connection of how it makes a difference for you.
Well, and you come back down to, is it Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and those basic needs are always, before anybody can look into the how do I contribute, let's have my basic needs met, my sense of security and belonging and understanding. So those basic needs are food and shelter. If we can have an effect on those, that's when we start getting the better out of people, because we know when we've got those basic needs met, we can then move on and support everybody else around us. It's so
true. And for the folks that don't know that, your reference, I would definitely say look it up, and we'll see if we can maybe find it and add it to the web page when this is up. Yeah. Because I know that even there was an infographic going around socially for a while of that too. People were just rediscovering the hierarchy and how important it is. So I would love to know then a little bit of, like, maybe not your entire history, because I know you have this amazing history of stuff, and we could spend hours doing this, but I want to know, like, how did you realize this is where you needed to be, like this profession? Like, so you talk about this helping and shaping, but how did you know that this was right for you?
Well, I think I knew it was right for me when I actually got there, and getting there was by complete accident. And it was certainly not a planned thing. I wasn't one of these people that grew up as a kid saying, I want to be a communications consultant. In fact,
wait, does anybody ever say that?
No, that's right.
I mean, do you know those people? I have not heard them yet at a cocktail party.
That's right. Well, I did grow up though saying I wanted to be a chef, and that's where I started, I have to say.
That seems more normal. Yeah, I get that.
Why don't you go from chefs to communications? It started with C. But there was that whole, as you go, I mean, oh, what is it that I want to do? I want to be a chef. And yes, I did work in that industry for a little while. But at the time, I was that young, restless, wanted to go out and party like we all do when we're teenagers and going into our early 20s. So I decided, no, that's not for me, and I went back and did my studies. I was going to be a teacher, and decided I really didn't want to work with kids. And then, but ended up working with kids for 15 years in the Scout Association.
Okay, well, see, that helps. That helps the story, because I was like, oh, and you hate children.
I had a kid hater on today of my show,
right? And we ended early.
Yeah, that's right. I cut it off. But yeah, I mean, that's a story in itself. But and that has helped me in my career as well, is actually working with youth in the community. But the thing that was for me was starting my first job in it was basically in logistics and then computers in an organization called Ericsson, which a lot of people would know.
Sure.
As a global organization. And I basically started there because of a friend who I adopted as my uncle, because apparently, when you applied for jobs in Ericsson in those days, family had priority. So I got in as, my adopted uncle. I
wonder if that would work with like Hollywood.
I wonder. Wouldn't that be interesting?
I mean, Brad Pitt, he's like my adopted uncle, right? So I'm sure I can get into some great role. I'm going to try this. Thank you for the advice, Adrian.
Okay, look, that tip was worth So that's how I started. But then I actually went back and studied business and human resources, and then ended up working in human resources for a number of years. But it was at a time where I was working in one of the major engineering divisions of Ericsson, and I was in a senior HR role, and I found that I really enjoyed working with people, and there's a lot of internal consulting and
Sure.
working in professional development, which I kind of enjoyed and obviously went back to. But at the time, I got approached by the CEO, who said, Adrian, he said, we need an internal communications manager. And he said, do you want to take the job? And I kind of looked at him and said, what is it? And he went, I have no idea. Not a bad intro into a profession. But, at the time, I mean, internal comms was just a thought. It was an idea. And there was a few people in organizations that were writing newsletters or, writing the email for the CEO in organizations. So I kind of said to him at the time, I'm not sure I want to do this. I'm not very good at writing, for a start. And this is what people seem to do. But he gave me the best advice anybody has ever given me, and that was, well, you could look at it that way, or you could look at it that we have an issue with communication in the organization, looking at the employee satisfaction survey. There was a lot of issues around people in the company weren't engaging with their managers and didn't believe the message, thought the environment, wasn't the best. So I went, okay, so I think there's a challenge in here. And I said, what's the job scope? And he says, you can do whatever you want. And he said, just fix it.
Well, okay.
Fabulous. So anybody that writes the open job check, I just went, fine, I'll step into this. And in a very short time, I learned to love the fact that there was challenges, there was a need within an organization, a very clear business need to get better at communication. And that's when I found that I love this stuff.
That's terrific. And did you then just, I'm going to jump you forward a little bit, but is that where you then just you started to really enjoy that and just kept growing in that area of communications because you started to realize that, there was this void in other companies and other ways for you to help individuals and organizations?
Yeah, it was because, I got the opportunity to write the first strategy for Ericsson for internal communication for the Asia Pacific region. And I remember Ericsson globally, they'd actually gone through and appointed internal comms managers right across the globe, the different market units. And I was the only one that had actually written a strategy at that time. So I remember getting the call from the vice president globally and said, "Wow, we've got a training course we're going to run in London. Come on over, and we're going to get everybody in the globe together." And so I said, "Fabulous! I finally get to learn what it is that I'm doing." And he said, "Well, I might have to manage your expectations a little bit." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because you're the only one that's written a strategy, and we're going to use that as the content of the course."
So you instantly become a teacher.
Instantly. So, when the universe opens up that path, one must travel down it.
Well, it's true. I just posted something the other day about, opportunity doesn't knock on the door, build it, or build a door. But it also sounds like, you kind of built the door and then opportunity came over to you, literally. I for the folks that don't know you, this is, I think, just clearly the first initial Adrian plays a leadership role in this profession, because it's, you've done so much for the profession already that it's a telltale sign right there.
Christopher, look, it has been my life. And I guess to a large degree, when you get to, into your later 40s, you're kind of going, okay, you've done all of this and you've worked with so many companies, you've built a business, you've delved in other areas of life, including retail, and I'm not going to go into that just yet. But there's all sorts of things that you've done. You get to a point where you go, it's all about giving back. And I guess the latest change from my focus and organization is about giving back. And there's a clear path for me now in the business to ensure that we can offer things like training and development to people in countries where maybe they can't afford always to get that training and development. So that's been a bit of that too. But also, this last few years has been about what can I do to support this profession and actually support communication professionals to be recognized as valuable business contributors to their organizations.
Yeah, that's important to see that too. And I love that you use the phrase "give back." My first reaction was to that is I usually do traditionally think, at least in the States, I think of volunteering. But I think it can be so much more. You can, especially if you've worked in a profession for so long and you've played interesting roles and you've learned along the way, that I think it comes from a point where, internal comms, when you first started, I'm just going to say this, you didn't, but it was not really recognized in most organizations. And so to grow along and having to kind of carve out that space, I could see where it would be, also fulfilling to be able to provide, it's almost mentoring in a much bigger way, providing the development and, and making sure that they can succeed, the people coming after you, as well as being that recognition, because recognition is probably important for the folks not in this space, because it's, so many other people like marketers, public relations, they are all recognized for the amazing, think about those ads are on TV. People are always winning awards for that. But
yes,
what do internal comms people get?
Yeah.
And it's not that you need an award. It's just this appreciation of doing really amazing work and being proud of where you've gone, I think.
Well, my experience over the years is internal comms is always on a constant battle for budget and constant battle to actually be heard within organizations. And I think, as you say, from the external world, and certainly advertisements and all of those get highly recognized. Recognition comes in part of actually having an organization that's functioning very well. And it's functioning very well because everybody in the organization is getting communications right with their people. And it shouldn't just lay on the communication professional, but they shouldn't be doing it for the organization. They should be working with the organization to be better at doing it.
Completely agree with that. I had this thought. I was going to, as you started talking about, earlier you talked about loving what you do because you're helping out, you're helping organizations, you're helping people develop. But it also sounds like, I'm kind of relate this to, someone who's not in this area. Because what I kind of heard was part of what you love is, being in this profession. It's about the profession itself and then helping it thrive. It's almost like your journey is not just, doing the thing that you like, but also making sure that others can succeed in it and that it becomes something bigger and better than it was.
Yeah. That is, for me, that's the strongest draw to be part of something. And to be perfectly honest, whichever path I would have taken in my life, I think probably I would always go in there, understand it, then help support it and get it better. I don't think it's just unique to this, and there's so many wonderful people out there that do the same with so many different professions in the world that kind of go, they see a need, how do we support it, how do we get better at it, how do we build the standards and those things. So I think, I'm probably one of these people that jump in and do that in any profession, but I think what's made it really strong for me is it's the people aspect of that, is that it really is about people having better lives in the companies that they work in.
I think that's so great. I love that you kind of related it to other professions. I could see other people, and it could be from accounting to HR to anything. When you said people, it made me flash back. I made that earlier comment about you being a superhero networker. I think that just speaks to you, and I know I joke about it, and you probably think I'm funny. And for the folks that don't know you, is because you are the most networked person I possibly know on this planet, because you have traveled extensively when you were, I know you just travel anyways for work, but you did this for when you were the chair of IABC, the International Association of Business Communicators. So you just have this, I think, way of, I think people is clearly part of your path there as well. Not just helping people, but you're helping them in so many unique ways. In your networking, that's how I met you through that event, in Los Angeles years ago. So I think there's something really wonderful there about you. You're right. It could have been implied in other areas, but this connection in the way of helping people is a big fabric of your DNA. I have to say, it was probably one of the best things about taking on a global role like the chair of IABC was the fact you got to meet so many people. And it's interesting, I do like the networking superhero, but it's I've never quite looked at it that way, but thanks for Well, you can count on me for those things.
Yeah. But it's you just saw real opportunities. I could be talking to somebody like I did with you in LA and go, oh my gosh, now I know you and what it is that you do and the amazing stuff you've done in your life. And suddenly you'd be talking to somebody in Europe and going, oh my gosh, you need to talk to Christopher Swan. He is absolutely amazing in this area. And the next thing you're making this connection. I'm sure some people run and hide when they go, oh my God, Adrian's sending me somebody else my way. No, I've had nothing but good feedback when I've been able to connect people. And I think this is the power of living in a global economy now, that it truly is about connecting people no matter where they are in the world, because the expertise is coming from all over. So there's no center of the universe when it comes to expertise in a particular market. There's people that are really good at various things or will benefit by a conversation. And literally that's what it's about, is let's have the conversation.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely, and I love that you said global economy, because it's so true. The world is so small now in regards to expertise, connections. We can kind of be anywhere. So, and absolutely, I can even agree to, as you shared about like, oh, well, you should connect with this guy to this guy. I remember you doing that a couple times with me. So that is absolutely truth that you do that. And I think people are better for it. So, and I think there should be more of that, and super applicable to so many other spaces. I'd love to transition just a little bit now to, obviously we kind of jumped through your career. I know that, you've had Cropley for quite a long time. I think 2004. If
Yes,
I'm doing that memory.
Right.
Okay. And so I know that
much better than mine.
well, I fake it. Sometimes I have notes and I really do, but that one was from memory. So, I know you've been doing this for a while. Now it's much bigger than it was. And you've been with IABC, helping them for such a long time and in different roles. And the thing I wanted to kind of transition to is just thinking about if you were to reflect back, these are a couple of questions I'm starting to ask folks in these interviews. Just knowing how seasoned you are and what you've been doing, is there something that, if you could look back at your younger self, is there something you wish you could have told yourself about managing your career that you know now?
That's a really, really good question. There's probably one thing I would have told myself in my younger self, if I was giving myself the advice. It sounds very, very strange to be giving yourself advice.
You're the best person to do it, though.
I just, the thing is with me, Christopher, as soon as somebody paints me a question like that, I visualize it. So I was having just flashes of me talking to myself, and I'm going, well, that happens on a daily basis. But I think that one thing I would say is recognize your strengths early. So, and it's not that defines where you go, because you should always keep opportunities to explore and understand new concepts. But recognize your strengths and have faith that rather than keep questioning yourself when people push back, you go, no, I know this stuff. So I would probably give myself the advice to be a little bit more, I guess, not direct, but a little bit have more conviction in what it is and my abilities. So, I would go, let me really delve into my core a little bit better, know exactly what it is that I am strong in, and then, follow that through and stick to yourself. Kind of back yourself is probably the best way of expressing it. So know what it is you're good at and back yourself with it.
That's interesting. I've heard that from a couple others as well, or in similar ways. Do you think now, when you reflect back on that it was because it was just new for you, or a new space, or why do you think maybe you didn't do that as much?
I think, what I specifically was reflecting on when I was thinking through the answer to that question is a time when I was working in an organization, and when you know it, you've worked in it, but people will question you to the point where you then start having self-doubt.
Yep.
And sometimes that self-doubt then leads you to make wrong decisions, and that decision is to back off or not challenge or allow things to go out, and you knew it was going to be a disaster. And I saw this particular opportunity when I was working with a project manager who made me feel amazingly inadequate, and it's because I questioned everything that I was saying, and I went, well, maybe I've worked in this career for years, and maybe I haven't learned anything, and maybe I do suck at my job. And literally then backed off and said, well, no, go out and communicate this particular way if that's what you want to do, because I just didn't want to have the fight. And it ended badly for a number of people. And I won't go into the specifics of it, but at the time, I just went, I could have stopped that from happening if I'd stood by what I believed in and what I know and really challenged this person. And that was the thing for me that said, no, sometimes you have to have conviction, and it's not all roses in a role. And sometimes you do need to make the tough call or have difficult conversations, because otherwise people get hurt and impacted. And literally a couple of people had lost their jobs. And I should have held in there.
I love that you said that, yeah, it's not all roses. I think that, especially for folks out there that are, would lean on the side of people pleasers, they just want to make everybody happy. That you can't always make people happy, especially when it comes into work. You do have to follow what you really love and know to be true, and just, and have the conviction to be strong. And I always say, follow your gut, in the end of it. So I love that you would tell yourself to, kind of have that conviction and back yourself more. That's really smart.
And look, to be honest, Chris, it made me stronger at it before, because I went, there is consequence to not backing yourself sometimes, and there is consequence. And it's not to stop listening, but it's saying, when write down, as you said, in your gut, you need to carry it through, even though it sometimes is hard.
Yeah, conflict is hard, and doing it yourself is hard. I think we learn that through experience. Another question for you it's similar to this, but it's maybe you'll have a different spin to it. So if and again, another kind of question that I'm starting to ask some folks that I think is kind of interesting. What's one piece of advice you would tell someone starting off in a new career? So it could be communications, or it could be anything. I think you definitely have a wonderful perspective, because you have seen so many organizations, consulted with so many folks, knowing that you've started off in a space that was not very, maybe centered. So again, what's one piece of advice you would tell someone starting off in a new career?
I clearly would say to people is, have a real vision of what you want to achieve in that particular role. And so it's step into it and go, after I've given myself time to understand it, get a feel for it, is go, let me just project myself 2-3 years down the track. Where would I want to be with this role? Mm-hmm. So is it building to the next role that I'm doing? Is it that I want to learn as much as I possibly can out of this role? But always have a point in which you will actually review where you're at. So I always look at it, and my brother is one of these people that I, and he admits it too, is you get stuck in the rut of a job. The job is the job. And if you look back and you've been there 20 years and you've been doing the same job. Now, for some people, that's exactly what they want to do, but you don't want to get 15 years into a job and look back and go, oh my gosh, I've got 15 years of regrets being in the job.
Oh yeah.
So give yourself that projection forward and say, what am I going to achieve in this next 2-3 years, or whatever it may be in this role, and what am I going to get out of it? And when am I going to actually sit down and reflect on what it's given me, and what more do I have to do? Because I think you need to understand very early that if it's not for you, or it's just a stepping stone onto something else, then you need to have that review to do it before you do get stuck. And the next thing is you wait for life to give you the boot to get out of it.
So true. Just don't follow along, right? I love that part of it too. It's because you could get into a job pretty easily, and the next thing you know, you could wake up and be like, well, I was doing it because I could do it, but it wasn't really what I really love. And absolutely. I think that's important to reflect on that. That makes me, it kind of leads into this next question of, because I'm flashing forward, you're seasoned in your role and in what you do, and not just a role really, but just in the things that that you love and enjoy, and that comes through in the type of work you're doing. So, we know that this professional development's a little bit newer and deeper in your space, for your organization. But what keeps you going? Like what inspires you to still love the work or love what you're doing?
There's two things, and I hope you weren't just looking for one, but there's two.
You can tell me.
Great. So one, the first one, I think most importantly is always keep things fresh. And what I mean by that is always reflect and look for opportunities and step into sometimes where it's a little bit scary. So for me, it's if the client rings and they paint and you kind of get, my gosh, you sound like you've got a really dysfunctional organization, and you feel a little bit scared of stepping into that. But it's going, back yourself, step into it, because whether you are successful or you fail, the one thing is that you will happen is you will learn, and you will learn from that experience. Mm-hmm. So my context has always been, it's going to be an experience whether I want to do it or I don't. And sometimes in the feeling of, I'm not sure I should, you're going to learn even more things out of it.
That sounds like the, clearly I'm very social online, because it sounds like one of those things I've seen about that was going around for a while. You only learn when you're outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
If you remember seeing that graphic going around for a while.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. You have to get uncomfortable to grow. Do you apply that kind of process or type of thinking even beyond your work life? Because I know you do volunteering and you do these other elements there. And you travel so much, and I know you love culture and cuisines and different things. Is that part of how you look at life as well? Is that a motivator?
It is. And I probably never made that connection for many years, but I'm glad you've said that, because when you start getting the visuals of all the things that you've done, going, oh yeah, I do like being outside of my comfort zone. So from the volunteer aspects, I mean, many years in scouting, 15 years I put into scouting, but I would always challenge the norm. And it was always uncomfortable because people didn't like change, and they didn't like to be challenged on change. So, when I pushed things like allowing, the 8 to 10-year-olds to be able to travel overseas, or introducing Joey Scouts to Australia, which is, for those that don't know, is I think they're called Beaver Scouts in the US, and they're the much younger, the 7-8-year-olds. People kind of, I'm not sure about this. And
wait, and they're called Joey Scouts over there?
The which ones?
They're called Joey Scouts? Is that what you guys call them?
Yes.
As in Joey's and a kangaroo? That's amazing.
Little kangaroos. The baby
I
kangaroos.
love that.
The wee little scouts.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. I was just like, that's kind of adorable.
Thanks for clarifying. But also in my travel, and as you said, I have a passion for travel, and combining my work with travel is just the ultimate. But I've been to countries where you really shouldn't go to, and some years back, and I have to say, take 10 years off me now. I'm not sure whether I could do it now, but I remember traveling to Algeria because I wanted to find out about the culture, and I met a friend and said, I'm coming over to investigate, and literally there's travel warnings all over the place. Don't go there.
Whatever you say.
There's just the challenge. Let's just go.
That's just propaganda. They don't really mean it.
That's right. And it wasn't until I had to jump from a train that was stationary, by the way, and being shot at, that I realized,
really?
Maybe this was a little bit more than I had expected.
Adrian, I had no clue. You're a daredevil. I had no clue you had done that.
Oh, look, I've been in countries when they've overthrown the president. I was in Bolivia when they overthrew the president, and there was riots in the streets, and there was all sorts of things. So, look, adventure travel is my thing as well. Probably not as much these days, although the latest visit to Saudi Arabia was an eye-opener. But it's, I kind of go, what is it you're going to learn when you step into it? If you survive it, what is it that you...
Nice. For the people listening, don't pay attention to that last part.
That's right. I am not advocating people go to countries where you're potentially going to get shot.
Yeah.
But I think, you and I had a conversation a while back, as one of my best learnings is when you're in an environment that is different or is uncomfortable. And, I've been to Papua New Guinea and conducted training over there. And that was one of the best things I've ever done, because as a communication professional, you're talking to them about engaging with their stakeholders and what forms of communication will you use to engage with them. And I got put well in my place when one of the delegates said, well, I'm working with a community at the moment that nobody speaks the same language. In fact, all of them are illiterate. They don't have power or roads, and probably only a couple of years ago they stopped eating their neighbors. So we're trying to introduce them to our organization. How would we go about that?
My flowchart's not going to work.
I kind of can't remember my answer at the time, because I think I was kind of scraping the chin off the floor and just went, well, there was a great lesson in understanding audience before I started talking to them about social media and tweeting.
Yeah, absolutely. It just goes to show that, obviously assumptions, and it does. I bet that changed you. It probably changed not just the way you approach work, but changed what you thought about people's needs.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and really understanding, from a communications point of view, it's all about the audience. Get over yourself about the shiny new channel, but it's all about the audience.
So true, so true. Well, I love that you just shared all those crazy travel. I feel like we maybe need to have a part 2, or I need to have a blog or some kind of podcast about travel now, the Adrian Show. That's fascinating. So much to know in that. And it's, I think, some really good advice you shared as well. So this has actually been a great conversation. I love that we walk through just pieces of, a little bit of your history and kind of where you're at today. Before we kind of wrap up, I do know that you just launched a new app that flows into this performance or this professional development. So maybe just give a little plug on what that is and what you guys just launched.
Absolutely. This has been an absolute thrill. So we've just launched an app for communication professionals, just to really assess their career. It's called the Career Evaluator, and you can download it from the Apple Store and the Google Store. And it really is, it takes you through the elements of communication and gives some pointers that you just rate in terms of where your strengths are. So it's a self-evaluation app. It sends you a bit of a report at the end of it, and you can go back and track that over time. So anybody that works in the field would like to download the app, just go to the Apple or Google Play Store, and it's called Career Evaluator from Cropley Communications.
That's amazing. I think that kind of stuff is wonderful. Even if you're not a communicator, I mean, it's just the idea of clearly it's for communicators, but the idea that you can have a tool, and it's free, isn't it?
It's free.
Online.
It's completely free.
Yeah, to have a free tool that can kind of help you take that step back and, figure out where you need to go next with your evaluation. So I think that's wonderful. We don't have enough things like that. I think I'd love to see even more versions of that for other people. So congrats on that. That's super great.
Well, thanks. And we will actually be looking at a tool that is an analysis tool down the track for this. And we want to do a little bit more of this. The journey into apps is always an interesting one, and it's again lots of lessons learned. But we're very, very proud for non-technical people getting an app out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I have not built an app yet, so I do not know, but I can only imagine the challenges that you could have with it.
It'll take a drink and a long conversation, Christopher, whenever you're ready.
Right. Next time I'm in Australia,
you would be welcome back to Australia anytime. We've enjoyed your trips here before.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're going to have to come up with some Kickstarter campaign or something to sponsor my show down there. That's how I've decided that we need to do it next. So anybody listening, feel free to start one, and we'll get me down there and we'll do a special show.
Absolutely.
So for the folks that want to follow along just with, either your app or your journey or your organization, what's the best places online that they should either follow along or contact you?
So look, honestly, please feel free to get in touch. So it's CropleyCommunications.com. If you want to go to our website, or you can literally email me, Adrian at CropleyComms.com. And please, do get in touch. We've got lots of professional development opportunities, but literally I am very open. I've got so many people that get in contact that I don't set the clock counter on and count minutes and charge by the minute or anything. I'm very open as a connector. You love connecting people and talking to people and listening, so always available.
I agree. And also, I think, and we'll put all the information on our website for your website. What about socially? Is there any place online, like on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or anybody else that they should probably look for?
Yeah, so our LinkedIn profile is Cropley-Communication. So it's linkedin.com/company/Cropley-Communication, or Twitter is at Cropley Comms. So great. Shortened at Cropley Comms. Or if you can get in touch with me, it's at a Cropley.
Great. I think that's so much fun. We'll definitely put all that stuff on there too. And I just was hoping that, people may want to see kind of where, see a little bit more background on you as well as your organization. So I think those are great. We'll list all those there.
Thanks so much for that, Christopher.
Well, Adrian, this has been terrific. Thank you so much for the conversation and for just sharing a little bit of I think, like I said earlier in the beginning of the conversation, you have this perspective that I haven't had on the show yet, which is, you've worked in these corporations, obviously smaller organizations as well, but you have such a different, unique view of it. And it's not so, I think black and white as, one of our guests, she makes cakes for a living and that brings her happiness because she's creative. And it's so black and white to see how she does that. It's wonderful. But I think I love that, for people that are in the space like you that can still find this love, this passion, they're following.
Yeah. And I do. And I wish that for everybody that is in the workforce doing something they love is keep loving it. And the minute you don't love it, do something else.
That's so true. I think we can all attest to that. Well, Adrian, thank you again. It's been wonderful. I know we'll talk soon.
It's been a great pleasure. Thanks so much, Christopher.
Okay, one of my favorite takeaway from that conversation is how Adrian connects the value of what he does to helping people enjoy a third of their life. For me, that says there's a connection to be made for all of us, what we do and how it helps others. Now over to you. Any thoughts or questions you'd like to share? Send us a message, post a comment on our Facebook page, or tweet us at Accidental Info using #LivingYourJourney. You can find out more about Adrian, links to his site, and channels, all at accidentalinformation.com. I'd love it now if you took a moment and head over to the show in iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a quick review. This really does support us in bringing in interesting guests each week and keeps the show going. I also read each of the reviews and love seeing your thoughts. As always, Living Your Journey is available each Tuesday. Until next week.